What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bourbon of the Week. My name's Chris. I'm going to be your host for today, and maybe you've heard of this thing called ChatGPT. Well, basically, it's an open source AI system that's supposed to take over the world in the next couple of years. Today, we're going to find out what it knows about bourbon. So here we have it. This is ChatGPT. This is open source AI. This is going to be Google on steroids. It's going to take over my job and yours. This is the future of the internet. And today we are going to ask it, what is bourbon? Bourbon is a type of American whiskey that is made from a mash bill that is at least 51% corn. That is true, aged in new charred oak barrels. I like that it does specify new, although it doesn't have to be a barrel, right? It can be any type of container, but for the benefit of the doubt, we'll say barrel is correct. And distilled at no more than 160 proof, also true. It must also be aged for a minimum of 2 years. That is wrong. The second it touches new charred oak, you can put bourbon on the label. I don't know why it says that. For 2 years, it has to be straight bourbon, but once it touches new charred oak, then it's considered bourbon. And be bottled at no less than 80 proof, that much is true. Bourbon is typically associated with the state of Kentucky, but can be produced anywhere in the United States. Thank you, ChatGPT. That is true. All you Kentuckians or anybody who thinks that bourbon can only come from Kentucky, you're wrong. Anywhere in the United States. So that's interesting. It's not 100% correct on this. This is just open source AI. So this is taking things from all over the internet. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that do think it has to be straight from Kentucky, or do think it has to be 2 years old, or can be in barrels and not just any type of container. But so far, it's doing pretty well. Up next, let's ask it, should you drink bourbon with or without ice? Bourbon can be enjoyed both with and without ice depending on your personal preference. ChatGPT out here spitting facts. That's absolutely correct. No matter how you like to drink your whiskey is the right way to drink it. Some people prefer to drink bourbon neat, meaning without ice, to fully experience the flavor and aroma of the whiskey. Others prefer to add ice cubes to their bourbon to dilute it slightly and cool it down. Take a little bit of that edge off, a little bit of that heat off. Nothing wrong with that. There's no right or wrong way to drink bourbon. It's all a matter of personal taste. Again, 100% correct. Some experts recommend to try it neat first to get the full experience of the taste profile and then decide if you want to add ice or not. I'm a professional because that's the way that I would say to do it. Try it neat, add some water, add some ice, add some Coca-Cola to it. I don't really care. If you paid for it, drink it the way you want. ChatGPT gets it. Next, we're going to ask it, what's the most popular cocktail that includes bourbon? I'm pretty sure it's going to tell us either an old fashioned or a Manhattan. Let's see what we get. The most popular cocktail that uses bourbon is likely the old fashioned. Obviously, the old fashioned is a classic cocktail that is simple to make, yet packs a lot of flavor. It is typically made by muddling sugar and bitters in a glass, adding ice, and then pouring in a shot of bourbon. The mixture is then stirred until the sugar is dissolved and garnished with an orange peel or a cherry if you like it. The drink is known for its balance of sweet, bitter, and strong flavors, making it a favorite amongst many bourbon enthusiasts. Now, this doesn't make it the way I make it. It's obviously one of the original recipes when you're talking about sugars, bitters, and then bourbon in a glass. Very simple, very elegant. The old fashioned is the way to go if you're making a cocktail. Now, I don't know the answer to this question. I'm going to guess before I go here, but I think it's Bulleit bourbon. I don't know why a long time ago I read Bulleit is the #1 selling bourbon, but that might have been the world. I'm asking in the US. Let's see what it says. As of 2021, the #1 selling bourbon in the United States is Jim Beam. I did not know that. I would have thought maybe it was going to say Jack Daniels, if you consider that a bourbon. But for right now, it's giving us Jim Beam. Jim Beam is a well-known brand of bourbon that's been in production since 1795. It's considered a classic bourbon known for its smooth, drinkable taste and affordable price point. Can't argue with any of those. It's a versatile bourbon that can be enjoyed neat, on the rocks, as a mixer in cocktails. Jim Beam is widely available in the US and can be found in most liquor stores. All correct. Now, I started off by asking it what is bourbon, but I'm curious 5 facts that it thinks it knows about bourbon. Let's see. Fact number 1, bourbon is a type of American whiskey that must be made from a mash bill that is at least 51% corn, aged in new charred oak barrels, and distilled to no more than 160 proof. We've already talked about the flaws in fact number 1 in our original question, so let's get to fact number 2. Bourbon is typically associated with the state of Kentucky. That is true, but can be produced anywhere in the United States. We already talked about that as well. The name bourbon comes from Bourbon County, Kentucky, where the first bourbon was made in the late 1700s. That's how I know it, at least. Fact number 4, we already talked about. Bourbon doesn't have to be aged for a minimum of 2 years. Once it touches new charred oak, it's considered bourbon. I have bourbons on my shelf right now, big bourbon label right on it, that have been aged for 6 months, even less than that, but it does have to be at least 80 proof. Fact number 5, the process of making bourbon involves several steps, including mashing, fermenting, distilling, and aging. The aging process is the most critical step as it gives bourbon its characteristic flavor and color. I would probably agree with all of that. So I was just curious, top 5 budget bourbons. It's got Evan Williams Black Label. I would have went white label, but what are you going to do? Old Grandad Bonded. Absolutely agree. Got to be on the list. Bullet Bourbon. I think it should be on there. We don't talk about it enough as a budget bourbon, but I think it deserves to be on there. Wild Turkey 101. This is 3 for 4 if you ask me. Four Roses Yellow Label. I think, yeah, I would put Four Roses Yellow Label on there as a top 5 budget bourbon. It's worth mentioning that this list is subjective and people have different tastes. Absolutely agree. These bourbons are considered a good value for the price and are widely available. All correct. Should everybody click that like and subscribe button right now? It says, in general terms, it's up to the individual's discretion whether or not they would like to subscribe or watch a video. So, would you like to subscribe? It can be a great way to support the content creator, show appreciation for the video, or indicate that the video was informative or enjoyable. Come on, guys. What are the most valuable bourbons on the market? My guess, it'll tell us about the Pappy Van Winkle lineup, but let's see. The value of bourbon can depend on a variety of factors such as age, rarity, and reputation. Some of the most valuable bourbons on the market include: number 1, Pappy Van Winkle, 15, 20, or 23 years old, from Buffalo Trace Distillery. Number 2, George T. Stagg. We're right back to that. William LaRue Weller. Who would have thought? More coming out of the BTAC lineup. Thomas H. Handy, the Sazerac Rye. Macallan 1946 is a Scotch whiskey, not a bourbon, but is considered one of the most valuable and rarest bottles of spirits in the world. Only 12 bottles were ever made and is considered a true luxury item. I hope to have one of those in my collection one day. Who knows? It's worth mentioning, though, that the prices of these bourbons can be very high, and they can also be difficult to find due to limited availability. Who would have thought? What is the best age for bourbon to be? Now, this does say that it's a personal preference, but this third paragraph down here says bourbon aged between 8 to 12 years are often considered the sweet spot, and I kind of agree. I like maybe a little bit older, maybe like 10 to 15 years, but definitely that 12 year when it comes to a sweet spot. It has a good balance of youthfulness and maturity and offer a good complexity of flavors. 100% correct if you ask me. That is the right answer for this. Generally, bourbon aged for a minimum of 2 years, which is the legal requirement, no it's not, is considered ready to drink. Again, it doesn't have to be 2 years old. That's wrong. Now last, we're going to end this on the question, how can we get better at tasting bourbons? And this is actually a pretty good list right here. Number 1, start by learning the different types of bourbon and the unique flavors. You have wheated mash bills, you have high rye mash bills, you have low rye mash bills, you have 4-grain mash bills. Figure out which one does what and then taste them knowing that. Taste different bourbons side by side to compare and contrast their flavors. I absolutely agree. I do blinds all the time. They are 100% something that have helped me in my bourbon tasting career. Number 3, use a clean palate. Avoid smoking or consuming strong flavors before tasting bourbon. Absolutely agree. If you're smoking a cigar, you're not going to get the same flavor profile as if you're not. Now, if you like smoking a cigar while you drink whiskey and you do get a different flavor profile, that doesn't mean that you're wrong for smoking a cigar. But if you want to know that true identity of the whiskey, try doing it without smoking. Number 4, take small sips and let the bourbon linger in your mouth. A lot of people will just take a sip and swallow it, and then they'll try to taste it. But if you let it sit in there for just a little bit, chew it up even a little bit, you'll get a little bit better of a flavor profile. Number 5, pay attention to the aroma. This isn't all about tasting. We all know how important the nose is when it comes to taste. This can give you clues about the flavors you can expect to taste. So once you do that nosing, then go in and start tasting your whiskey. Let's get into number 6. Number 6, keep a bourbon journal. This is the whole reason that I started this YouTube channel, so I can go back and see what flavor profiles I got from a specific bourbon, because I have a terrible memory. If you don't feel like making a YouTube channel, start a bourbon journal. It's going to help you out tremendously. Keep your notes in there. You can always go back, revisit it, and see if anything changes over the years. And finally, number 7, practice, practice, practice. You have to practice. You have to keep drinking it. You're going to start out with low proof 80 stuff. You're going to start out with sweet notes and spicy notes. Then you can work your way into the higher proof stuff and start talking about grandma's pecan pie that you had in 1975 and how this reminds you of that and that flavor profile and the complexity that comes along with it. But you can't do that without practice. So hey, this was just a couple of questions that I wanted to ask ChatGPT. Maybe I'll do this again, so leave a comment in the comment section below of a question that you think I should ask it, or go out and try it yourself and let me know a question that you asked it. But in the meantime, make sure you click that like and subscribe button. Check us out on Instagram at Bourbon of the Week, that link in the description below. Come check us out on Discord, where you can chat with us 24/7, that link in the description below as well. We have a Patreon page. We do a lot of cool things just for Patreons, group hangouts once a month, a special Discord page just for us. So that is also in the link in the description below. Please don't drink and drive. Always drink responsibly and stay healthy, stay happy, stay chatting. Cheers, y'all.